Hello everybody, in this video series I'm going to be showing you how I made this Roubo Workbench. Hello everyone, we're on now part 7. In this part, I'm actually getting the bottom frame together. Yay! Looks like a cot at this moment, or a crib, for you Americans, whatever. So here, I am measuring, I obviously dry fitted it there, and I'm measuring the distance that I need to cover for the tongue and groove slats on the bottom. It's a little bit difficult because obviously there's an overlap on each of the tongue and groove slats, so it's difficult to measure the exact width you need. So here I'm ripping them slightly oversized, and then I'm going to tongue and groove them all together, and then I'll trim the outside ones to fit that final width. So I wanted to make these slats fit the groove on the underframe pretty snug at this point. Obviously I was going to sand it down with a random orbit later. So to do it really precisely, I used the drum sander, take it down like 0.2 of a millimetre at a time, and then you can see on the left there I have got the stretcher that I'm going to be testing the fit for the right hand side now. So between each of these passes I was just squishing it into that groove to see if it would fit. If not, do another pass, and there you go. So you see it's quite snug at this point. I wanted to loosen it up a tiny bit after that, just so I've got a little bit of wiggle room once it's all together. Now here I'm orientating the slats to give the most pleasing grain pattern. So after much experimentation, messing around, basically I was trying to get the clean face on top. As you can see here, I'm going for like a zebra effect with it. Two of the boards had ever so slight differences in their colour, and funnily enough, once the workbench is complete, this is what most people have been pointing out. Instead of looking at the whole workbench saying it looks amazing, they're like, oh my god, I love the stripy slats on the bottom. All that time, effort, money, and that's what people point out. Just goes to show how important grain orientation and colour matches and all that, doesn't it? So here I'm doing some test cuts for the groove. Now I feed it in a little bit with a power feed, take a nibble out, and then feed it back and check the height and measurements and everything to make sure it is all central, and then commit to a full pass on the actual boards. To cut the tongue on the opposite side, I'm going to switch that grooving block with a rebate block, and then take a pass on one side, flip the board over, take a pass on the other, and then that will create the tongue. Now I needed to allow for expansion and contraction between these slats, so that meant spacing them with a 1mm gap between them. And to make this gap look a little bit nicer, just planed a small chamfer on them, and it just made it look a bit more intentional rather than a mistake. And here I'm just cutting them to their final length. With the slats all spaced out as they would be in the frame of the workbench, I could then work out the final length that it needed to be and trim that off on the table saw. And now the only remaining work I had to do on them was cut and notch out the corner of all the outside slats, and these would just wrap around the legs and fall into that groove as well. With those all cut out, I could get onto the final sanding with the random orbit. So this is why I made them so snug to start with, because then once I sand them down to their final grit, which was 180, that would make them not too tight, but not too loose either. Just a nice perfect fit that allows me a little bit of wiggle room. And beyond that, there was only one major job I needed to do at this point, and that was to cut the slidey bit that the sliding dead man slides on. So this is why I needed the extra meat above that tenon on the front stretcher. And I just cut this using the table saw and then cleaned it up with my number 7 after that. So with that all done, I could knock together a quick dry fit of the frame, check nothing needed improving, check there was no major mistakes with it. One thing I did notice here was that I thicknessed those slats to be the same width as the router bit that I used to cut the groove, and this made them a little bit too flexible. Look at the stripiness there, by the way, and those slats, looks amazing. But yeah, obviously it made them a little bit too flexible. So what I did was crush the frame together and then measure the distance between the two side stretchers, and then I'm going to put 2 support battens underneath those slats to support them. And what I could also do with this batten was screw through it and actually hold those tongue and groove slats in position, which is good because over time those slats might have shifted out of parallel and thus create uneven shadow gaps. So the screws just hold that all in place and prevent that from happening. And then just a quick clean up on all the inside faces where it would be difficult to access later on. I also quickly went over all the faces that I had previously sanded because there was a little bit of glue on them here and there. So quick sand all over and then whack it together. Before the glue dried, I spaced out all the tongue and groove slats to their final position. Reason for this is in case there was any squeeze out in the mortises that I couldn't see and it would start grabbing those outside slats, and if it dried obviously I wouldn't be able to move those slats and basically create the even shadow gaps that I was looking for. So doing it now while the glue was still wet reduced that risk of happening. then start whacking in the drawbars. Unfortunately, I filmed the only one that I managed to snap, which was rather annoying, but you know, watch it go. Oh, gone. Quick rage. Yeah, so I just drilled that out later on and replugged it. If it looks alright, it is alright. And here, just drilling the pilot holes, clearance holes, and countersinks for the screws on the underside of the workbench to hold all those slats in place. And that's it for this episode. The next one is houndstooth dovetails. Yes, it's a fun one, so we'll see you then.